Everybody can grab their seats, and we'll thank you, Quint, and we'll get started. So, my name is Joe Pickens. I'm the president of St. John's River State College, and I've lived in Putnam County all 60 and a half years of my life, and I think many of y'all have, and that one of the reasons we're here is because we care so much about our community. So before we get started, if everybody could stand, I'd ask County Commission Chair Bill Pickens to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please have your seats. So I had just a couple of four remarks before we get to Mr. Studor, and one is off script. And so what I'd like to do is, for those of you that read the Palatka Daily News, and you should, whether you're happy about how it's delivered to you now or not, you should read it. You probably then know about the issues that the county's been having with CSX and the sheriff. Now, what I'm here to tell you is, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. What you don't know is that what you read was so anticlimactic and so non-consequential because of the hard work of your sheriff and your county administrator and all five, but four of them are here, your county commissioners, who worked all night and all day on the Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday of Labor Day, trying to come to some resolution with CSX while we slept or worked or enjoyed our weekend and our holiday. So I'd like Commissioner Rawls and Commissioner Pickens and Commissioner Turner and Commissioner Goddard, who are here, and Terry Suggs, would you please stand up and be recognized? And thank you for the work that you do behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Now that you've thanked them, you can feel fine about calling them, complaining about whatever you want to call and complain about next. I know how that is. So for many of you, you've been here. This is your third meeting. And frankly, as I was talking to Commissioner Goddard ahead of the meeting, we weren't sure how many people were going to show up for the third meeting. A lot of people came to the first one. And frankly, there was a lot of energy, and we felt that energy, and we were proud of it. And we wondered, well, is it sustainable? And Commissioner Goddard reminded me that, you know, he said, Joe, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And for those of you that are here, thank you for recognizing that this is in fact a marathon and not a sprint. But what's happened from the first meeting that we've had, or slightly before that until now, just in the Palatka Daily News this week, we were reminded that the Hotel James is now on the National Register of Historic Places, and that's something that will help downtown. Frankly, we're also made aware that a local group has purchased the Penny's building and is going to try to do something with it. Quint said in one of his first meetings, don't expect outsiders to come in and invest in your community if you're not willing to invest in it yourselves first. So, well, now we have at least two groups that have been willing to do that and take a chance. He's also told us previously that the ones that go first are the ones that are taking the real risk. But if somebody doesn't do it, then it's just not going to get done. And frankly, for those of you that have lived here a long time, you've watched nobody do it for 2 decades, including me. And finally, I decided and others that, you know, I'm part of the problem if I'm watching and waiting somebody else to come do something about our home. And so again, for those of you who are here and are willing to do something about our home, thank you. So Mr. Studor is not here to help us. That may come as a surprise. He's here to help us help ourselves. I think there's a big difference in that. It's kind of like whether somebody gives you a fish or teaches you to fish. He's here to help us help ourselves. This is our community, and these are going to be our ideas of what we do to make things better. I've looked up his biography a couple of times, and there's a quote at the very bottom that reminds me of talks that I've given as a college president to graduates, both high school and college, that talks about civic responsibility. I'm going to read something very quickly and I'll be done. But all of you have your own ideas of what civic responsibility means to you. whether it's something you learned on your own, but more likely it was something your parents taught me. It's certainly something that my parents, our parents, taught Bill and myself. It's comprised of actions and attitudes associated with democratic governance and social participation. Civic responsibility can include participation in government, church, volunteers, and membership of voluntary associations. Actions of civic responsibility can be displayed in advocacy for various causes such as political, economic, civil, environmental, or quality of life. Well, all of us, I think, are here to improve our quality of life. My last 2 years in the legislature under Speaker Marco Rubio, we wrote a book. Not a well-read book, but a book nonetheless. It's called 100 Innovative Ideas for Florida's Future. And we went around the entire state of Florida and did focus groups and tried to develop, and ultimately did, 100 innovative ideas to make Florida better over the next 20 years. Not our ideas, but ideas that came from the people that we interviewed from those focus groups. And there were hundreds of ideas from which we culled it down to 100. There was one common theme. One. You would think out of all those ideas, there'd be more than one. The one common theme was that people, adults, wanted an opportunity for a better life for their children than they had themselves. That's what every one of them wanted. They all had different ways and ideas about how to make that happen, but the core principle of what they wanted was they wanted the opportunity for their children to have a better life than they had themselves. And most of them wanted that opportunity to happen for their children in the community that they chose to live and raise those children. That's what we want to do. Many of you know that I was born and raised in Crescent City, and I went off to college and law school, and I came back to the community that I love. And it's the best decision that I ever made. But sadly, none of my 3 children ever considered it. They never considered it. We're here to make a difference for your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren so that they would never consider leaving and not coming back. That's what we're here for today. So, we're here to listen to Quint Studor, and this is what he says about his fundamental purpose and goal in living his life and therefore in helping us help ourselves. He says that he has a human responsibility to act and to do so with a sense of urgency and always connect his actions back to his purpose. I say that we take that from this meeting and all the other good guidance that he's going to give us. This meeting will have been well worth all of our time. Thank you for indulging me for a few minutes, and now let me introduce to you Quint Studor.
Wow, that was nice. Didn't you do a nice job? Yeah. Couldn't you feel the authenticity? And the fact, I read one of Joe's talks, I think it was for Rotary, and it was phenomenal. It reminds me of years, I love music. I love music. And I'm an old guy, so I like a lot of 60s music. And if any of you aren't doing anything on September 28th, come and listen to Vanilla Fudge. They'll be in Pensacola, for those of you who know that that's a band, not a dessert, and so on. So years ago, there's a concert series called TAMI, T-A-M-I. It was in California. It was almost before the concerts got big. Again, this is all people over 60 will probably be the only ones that understand. I'll say to Nicole, do you remember that song? And it's like, Quint, I wasn't even born near that song. But so the TAMI concert, and they bring it in groups. And this one year, 1964, 65, somewhere in there, they had James Brown. Anybody ever hear James Brown? I feel good. Anyway, James Brown was doing the first time appearing before an all-white audience in his life. All-white audience, James Brown. And the other group that was traveling through the United States for the first time was a group out of Britain called the Rolling Stones. Okay, so James Brown went right before Mick Jagger. And I think James Brown upped his game because Mick Jagger was right there. If you ever watch James Brown, he would finish a song and then they throw a cape on him. Does anybody remember? They throw a cape on him, and then he'd walk off the stage, and then he'd throw the cape off, grab the mic, and then they'd throw the cape on him again, and then he'd go off. But he never usually did 1 or 2 capes. He did a 3-cape encore that night. And watching James Brown was Mick Jagger. And Mick Jagger watched James Brown, and they believed, and you can go on Tammy, T-A-M-I, James Brown, and you'll see it if you'd want to see it. And anyway, Mick Jagger didn't go on for 45 minutes because he wanted the time between James Brown and him to be that long. So if you don't mind, I'd like to take a 45-minute break right now. That was wonderful, and thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Let me tell you what I'd like to walk through today. First of all, congratulate the Pensacola Young Professional, or the Palatka Young Professionals. It was sort of cute. You remember, did anybody go to the Blue Crab Festival? Okay. I was getting text messages during it, and the one I liked the best is, "We're out of blue crab," which is a good sign. So they have some information about what they're going to do, and their next thing they're going to kick off is quite phenomenal. We believe that citizens, and they believe, need education and raise the civic IQ on what's going on. So they've got some material from the best urban planners in the country, and they're going to start doing an educational series here in Palatka. We've done something similar in Pensacola, and we've been just amazed. We're amazed that 200 people show up. We're amazed that 6,700 will watch videos with people talking about streets, talking about urban development, talking about safety, talking about education. So congratulations to your Palatka Young Professionals. A couple other things. I have a new book coming out in October called Building a Vibrant Community, or no, excuse me, that was my old one, Busy Leader Handbook. That's the type of books I normally write. I've written leadership books most of my life, and that one's by Wiley. And I hope you buy a copy. I don't get any money. Even the money you pay us, I don't take a dime. I haven't paid myself any money since 2012. I got lucky. I sold a company for more money than I ever thought. Now, do I get money? Yeah, I pay people like Dottie DeHart, who's in the back, because she hasn't sold a company. I pay Nicole Webb, who's right over here, because she hasn't sold a company. Even my books, and I always tell the people, you should hope my books do well, because all the money I get, I put right back into the community, truly, that I live in. And that's sort of interesting, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's called the Busy Leader Handbook, and Wiley picks, I get like endorsements, and they pick different endorsements that they like, and they put it on the back cover. And one of the people in this room who endorsed the book got picked for the back cover. So everyone that reads this book, when they look at the back cover, will read a little bit about Palatka, Florida, which is really, really good. Because I believe this will end up like some of my books on the New York or the Wall Street Journal's bestseller list. So that's sort of nice. So you'll get a little bit of play there. I did these, and I did these a little while ago. We had a cartoonist for our local newspaper. He was the editor, called Earl Bowden. Earl Bowden passed away about 5 years ago. We just put a sculpture of him downtown. He's very beloved, very beloved. He's the one that fought to protect our beach, so everybody have public access instead of just private people having the beach. He really did a lot of things to protect the environment. And so we recently created an Earl Bowden Plaza. And it's sort of cute because it's Earl, but then we put a chair there and him doing a cartoon so people will sit for, social media type stuff. And it was really cute. And I actually have a video of his wife, his widow, and after everybody left, she sat on the chair, and you could see her going like this to Earl. Why did you leave me? Something like that. But the reason I did this is because Earl was on top of it for years. Earl was saying things in 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000 that he thought the city and the county should do, but we just didn't do it. So if you look at this is him talking about our bayfront, which is sort of downtown, and that we should do something with it. If you look at this one, this is him saying we needed a master plan, we needed a government center, we had to take advantage of our waterfront, we had to make sure that we had a historic district, and that was in the 1980s. He laid out a game plan for us. He just laid it out, what we could do as a community. this was again, he's back again saying we need comprehensive planning, sort of going through what's going on. Here he is again. Now the reason here he is again, does anybody know why he keeps doing these cartoons? Because nothing was happening. You know, so basically this is once again, all together gang, he's trying to get the city and the county working together to do something to make a little better quality of life. Here he is again, he thinks we should he's trying to attract private investment to help the community, particularly going into the neighborhoods. Here is downtown, showing it shuttered up, showing that people had left. The downtown had been pretty much deserted, and once again, he's trying to figure out what they can do to fix downtown. So I bring that up because somebody asked me when they visit, we have Springfield, Ohio coming to Pensacola next week. I get a question, they say, what's the difference between Pensacola then and Pensacola now? And it's called execution. This ain't planning. I mean, you probably have plans, don't you? You probably got 3-ring binder plans everywhere. You could probably use chairs for your plans. You sort of know you're in trouble when people keep planning, because when they keep planning, it means they're not executing. Now, I'm a big believer in planning. I like plans. You have to plan, but sometimes you have to execute. And that's really what this is all about, executing. So as you know, we do an assessment, and we did it again, and 55 people responded. And let me walk through where we're going to go. But let me tell you what I'd like you to leave with today. First of all, like Joe said, this is a marathon. And for some of you will not see the finish. Truly, some of the people that really have driven Pensacola when this started, Roger McDonald is now deceased, and he came to every meeting early on to make this happen. Nathan Kahn, who came to every single meeting, who had a store years ago downtown, is in a home now. But he still writes me little notes from the nursing home about what's going on. So that's the stuff you do, and like Joe said, but you don't do it for you do it for that next generation. We just had Mayor Joe Riley, the Charleston mayor, for all those years. He's considered the greatest mayor ever, in Pensacola for 2 days. One of the things I loved what he said is he never voted on likability. Everything he voted on, will this make it a better community for my children and the grandchildren? And he said if he didn't get reelected, that'd be okay, because he'd rather vote with his values than vote looking for a job. And then it must have worked because he won 19 different re-elections until he decided not to run. So I'm going to walk through this, but then I'm going to show you the process. And I'm going to show you based on change, because what we all have to do is we're creating a change. And if we don't understand change, there are parts of change we'll want to stop, naturally. Parts of change we'll get a little bit scared to. How many of you ladies in here have ever, like, had, not delivered a kid like a doc, but had your own kid? Okay. Did you go through any childbirth classes before you had your kid? Yeah. They told you what it was like, right? Was it, you ever notice, I worked in hospitals for years. You know how I could tell the new moms, when they were having their first kid? You know how you could tell? They were smiling on their way into the hospital. No, they really were. They were excited, you know what I mean? They're going in, and she's got some pillow that she's been bringing, and they've got video cameras. They're going to do video. They're going to do pictures. She's going to write thank you notes while she's in the hospital. It's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of beauty. And everything's going pretty good for a while. In fact, I remember my wife's and the first baby, we were so waiting for the labor pains to start. You know what I mean? We were just sitting there, and she'd go, ooh, was that a labor pain? I don't know. I've never had a labor pain. You know, we were debating. She would debate, is it, isn't it? Is it gas? Who knows? Anyway, so the reality is, of course, then you get some labor pains. Then you wonder, when should I go? Because the last thing you want is to go, tell everybody you're going, and then be sent home. You'd rather sleep in your car in the parking lot than go home. And then you go in and you start going through the birthing process. And of course, you don't need an epidural. You're going to do it naturally. This is the way it's going to be. No problem, because you went through all these baby and me classes. And everything's going good. We're dilated to 1, dilated to 2, dilated to 3, dilated to 4, and then things start to change. You can always tell they change because the woman makes a noise. Ow! And all of a sudden, all that stuff changes. Maybe I will take an epidural. Too late, too late, too late. And about that time, the husband now gets a little bit nervous. He all of a sudden starts figuring this out. He looks at his wife, he looks at the whole situation, and he decides, this ain't possible. This will not work. He might even say to the doctor, I don't see how this is going to work. And he'll tell him, it'll be okay, we'll be okay. But then they coach the lady. They help tell her what to go through. They give her a lot of positive recognition. Oh, they make you think you're the best breather in the history of childbirth. Oh, that was good. Oh, that's good the way you breathe. Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. And then they tell you who's doing nothing. Oh, nice job. Really nice job. And then of course, and then sometimes there's strict talk. You got to push now. Sometimes we have to be a little bit structured. Here's what you've got to do. If you want, you've got to do some pushing, and it's going to be a little bit painful. And here's what you got to do. And then all of a sudden the baby is born. And they're so smart because how they alleviate pain from the mom from having this baby, because it's hard. I mean, I know what it's like. When I was a freshman at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, our science instructor talked about childbirth. And here's how stupid all us guys were, because he wanted to explain what childbirth was like. So he had us take our lower lip and pull it down to our chin. Then he told us to take our upper lip, and here we're all like this, and pull it over our head. So the reality is, all of a sudden, and they put that baby right there on you, skin to skin, unless there's a challenge with the NICU or something like that, and then you go through it. Now, the guy's pretty good about this, because this is when they really get engaged. It's unbelievable. The guy will say these magic words, "We did it." You wonder how much we there really was in this thing, wasn't there? But the reality is, if you didn't know what was coming, you would want to quit. If you didn't know what was coming, when the pain came, you would have stopped. This is a marathon. We've all heard of marathons where you hit a wall. When you hit a wall, psychologically, it's telling you to stop. So a big part of today is being sort of like a midwife, telling you what it's going to be like as you continue to go through this, for preparing you for some tough pushes, preparing you for some tough times. But is it worth it? You bet it's worth it. And when we believe something's worth it, like Joe talked about a little bit ago, then we go through it. Because, Joe, I have 7 grandchildren, and none of them live in Pensacola, Florida. None of them. Now, 3 of them never made it to Pensacola, Florida, because they were older when we moved, and they married people that were from Wisconsin. They stayed in Wisconsin. We had 2 children that we moved with us to Pensacola. One lives in Chicago, and one lives in Pensacola. She's 34. That biological time clock doesn't seem to be clicking all that much right now. But that's really it. That's really it. So I get this. This is more than just a job. This is understanding what it's like not to see your grandkids play soccer, not to see them in a musical. This year went all the way up to Wisconsin to watch our freshman daughter and granddaughter in high school be in a play. So we sort of get that, sort of understand that. And that's what it's like, what we're talking about here. So I'm going to go through your survey results, and then I'm going to walk through change. Because if we understand change, when we get to it, we won't be that scared of it. Will it still be painful at times? Yeah. Will it still need some pushing at times? Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we'll stop, because that's the worry, is stopping. Because most cities will fail at what I'm talking about, because if every city could do it, they'd already have done it. Because what we're finding in cities like you, like us, small and mid-market cities, we've been transporting and exporting our talent to big cities for the last 50 years. They go to different cities, and then how do you get them back? For the first time ever, we have a chance to get them back for some very specific reasons. Number one is affordability. Some of these cities are getting so expensive that young people can't afford to live in them. Now, what we have to combine affordability with, I would guess it's less expensive to buy a home in Putnam County than Nashville. just a guess. Probably cheaper than Tampa, probably cheaper than Orlando, and probably a little bit cheaper than Jacksonville, okay? But we just can't be affordable. We also have to offer opportunity, and we have to offer vibrancy. And that's what this is all about. So let me walk through your results. Between 2018 and 2019, on a 1 through 10, how engaged do you think your community citizens are? You've gone from a 3 to a 5.19. And I think that's good. Research by James Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, says if you go like this, you go like this. It's methodical, stair-step approach is what you want. The question is, how likely is it for young people to live and work in the community after graduating from high school or college? You've gone from a 2.2 to a 3.6. And Joe, by the way, thank you for running a great school. That's one of the bright spots that we talk about often when you have a college in your own town. How do you attract new business? You've gone from a 2.1 to a 4.7. I think it's actually in 1 year quite remarkable. Now, is it where you want to be? Of course not. But are you moving in the right direction? Are you trending in the right way? Absolutely. How easy to create and run a small business? You've gone from 2.7 to 4.1. And there's a lot of tactics on how to take this to the next level, and we can give you those next couple days and over the phone and things like that. How strong is your education system? You've gone from a 2.89 to a 4.65. Some of your things, that your high school graduation rate's been popping up. You know, you got some things moving in the right direction, and enjoy those. Enjoy those trends. Celebrate those trends. How likely are small business owners seeing training and development? So if you see, there's a couple things that went up more than others, but grabbing the small business skill set and development is one thing that I think you've done well in, but you can do a lot, you can do better in. I mean, that would be one of the focus areas I would have. Vibrant downtown, you've gone to a 3.49 to a 4.58, and I think you got some exciting things on the road, and we'll talk about that with some of the development here going on. How successful you're getting wealth from the sidelines. You've from a 2.5 to a 4.59. I bring that up because when I looked at communities, if you can't get your wealth off the sidelines, you're not going to have the community you want. By wealth off the sidelines, I'm talking about people that have worked hard, normally worked hard, and they've made money. And now they're at a certain age where they've got that money invested. And most of us, like me, we have what we call wealth managers. My wealth manager is Randall Wells. He manages 2 families' wealth, myself and Bubba Watson. That's who he manages. And he makes sure that he invests our money for a return on investment. Now, when he looks at returns on investment, he looks at ROI. When I sold my company, my accountant, my CPA said, Quint, if you and Rishi put this money here, this is how much money you'll have when you're 83 years old. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this at 83 years old? And I might not even be alive when I'm 83 years old. And the last thing you want to do is give kids a lot of money. It doesn't work out. It just doesn't work. That's research. It just isn't that good a thing. So the reality is, how do you get people to take their money out when, let me tell you, your wealth managers tell you not to do it? Because how do wealth managers make their money? On your money. So when you take your money out of their investments, Robert, you want to talk about this topic at all? Okay. When you take their money out of their investment, they're making less money. Okay? So, for example, Josh Sitton, who played football for 11 years, invested a small piece in an apartment building downtown. His wealth management people told him not to do it. Financially, it didn't make sense. But he did it because the ROI is different. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that ROI here in a little bit. How proficient is your community in measuring, tracking, reporting outcomes? Again, this comes a little later, but getting a dashboard and measuring quality of life is part of the next step on where you go with this, because you've got to measure and you've got to hold it up. So if you look in my book, Vibrant Community, I have a sample dashboard. We just did the quality of life survey with Mason-Dixon for the 11th year in a row. And we've shown that the community went from 26% thinking we were moving in the right direction to 63%. And if you remember me speaking, you'll probably never get more than 70%. Every community has about 30% of the people that are going to be against everything. You might not have them in Putnam County, but if you don't, I got some I'd like to ship over here. Okay? You know, and I think this is my joke I tell, and if you've already heard it, at least laugh at it the second time or third time. I hired a guy named Bruce Barcelo, who's a pollster in Florida. And when we were getting ready in 2005 for a referendum, he polled negativity in our community. And they basically asked a question that most people would say positive stuff to. Like, what if you can have all the money in the world? And instead of being excited, they'd say, well, do I pay taxes on that money? And Bruce found out, he thought Pensacola was one of the most negative. When I say Pensacola, I mean Escambia County. So when I say Pensacola, I mean Escambia County. Was the most negative county in Florida that he had tested. Normally, it's about 22% of the people are just always against. We had over 33% against. What he said is if God came to Pensacola and put heaven downtown, people would complain, oh my gosh, it's a gated community. So now we're at 63%. Probably the thing we were the lowest in 5 years ago was, is this a good place to be an entrepreneur? And not, with our focus, we've now moved up, but Gopher Eisen named us the 17th best city in the United States to do a startup business. U.S. News and Report said we're the 15th best, most desirable city in the United States of America, ahead of Asheville and Santa Barbara. And 15 years ago, we were right where empty downtown, young people leaving. But I say it's 15 years ago. Not 3 years ago, not 5 years ago, not 8 years ago, 15 years ago. And that's why I admire so many of you that are doing this really for the benefit of others. So, what extent are local government entities aligned, successful, working together? At one time you were 2.68, you're at a 4.56. You're trending in the right direction. Here's how committed are you making the community the best you can be? And your score is almost a 9. And isn't that the most important score in there? It's right there. So that's a little bit about your assessment. Now what I'd like to talk about is some bright spots. You've got some programming going on downtown. Nobody's going to start a business downtown if there's no people downtown. So you got to, first of all, do a lot of things to get action downtown. You have your Palatka Young Professionals, and that's not an easy thing to do. People say, why aren't there more young people here? Well, because they're reading to their 3-year-old, their 5-year-old, they're coaching soccer. That's why it's important to use social media and the internet to bring some messages to the young people. You have a small business challenge underway, which we find very successful, and you are creating a community dashboard right now. You've got an engaged newspaper, you're so fortunate. When we go and I travel the country or people come to Pensacola, one of their big complaints is the media. They don't cover local news anymore because most papers aren't local anymore. That's just the way it is. And the fact that you've got a Palatka News that's local, that's putting things out there, makes you an outlier today in the business world. Most communities don't have that. They have a paper that's owned so far out of town. Our local paper is owned by Gannett, and it goes to print at 7 p.m. It doesn't even cover local sports anymore. It doesn't even cover local sports. Now, we're lucky because they do cover local things like this. So they've been a great partner, but they also have to listen to somebody that tells that. So you have a great newspaper here. Is anybody here from the newspaper? Let's give a nice round of applause. Civic engagement like this, your downtown contest, and that's where we got to get implementing some of these ideas. You know, you had 132 responses. And you know what a great return on investment? That cost $1,000. I mean, that's a great return on investment for $1,000, but you got to implement them. You got to execute them. And the way I look at execution, if it doesn't damage anything, let's try it. And if it fails, it fails. But sometimes we're so worried about getting it right because we'll hear criticism. Or what if something doesn't work? I was speaking at the Florida Association of Planning. There were 600 people there, and it really was, a well-received presentation. And I talked about it takes 3 positives to 1 criticism for somebody to feel good about another human being. So I finished the talk, and this woman runs right up to me right off the bat and says, you know what? I didn't like the way you used the word execution. I think you should use the word implementation versus execution, because execution bothers me. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Was there anything good? She said, oh yeah, I liked it a lot. Our honing device sometimes goes back to what's wrong instead of what's right. And we get into a habit of that. So that's something to always look at. And you've got wealth, and you got your downtown going, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to talk about in a second with not only is the James getting back in action, because history's nice, but the greatest part about being a historic landmark is you get tax credits you can go fix it up with. Or else it's no good to have a historic tax mark if nobody's in the historic thing. So that's just the first stage. But also the fact that some buildings have been bought and put into some different type of uses, and that's wealth committed to investment, and let me talk about that. What I find is there's three types of investors when a community is going through a revitalization. There's philanthropy, people that just give money for philanthropy. Could be the Blue Crab Festival, they just donate money to make it happen. It could be a boat launch, it could be a Y, it's just pure philanthropy. They're just giving the money, and it's all wonderful, and so on. And then there's pure return on investment. That means I'm not going to invest unless I am making at least as much as I can make in the money market, in wealth management. Robert, you're into this business, right? Wealth management. Over the last 5 years, what's the return on investment's been, the average? Yeah. 7? Okay, how about 2 years ago, what was it? Yeah. 5. So if I can't at least make 7, I probably won't do it, right? So what I'm saying, if I can't at least make a certain return, I'm not maybe going to do it because it just doesn't make financial sense. So you have to have a different type of ROI. And the ROI is a hybrid. That means that you're going to invest money with the understanding that you aren't going to lose money because you're not going to get many investors that can just keep losing, okay? So I'll do it, but I'm probably going to make less money. So I'll do 26 apartments, and I'll do it for 6% return or 5% return because I'll understand the return won't be as good as I thought, as I could get somewhere else, but my return's going to be a little different. My return's going to be watching kids stay home. My return's going to watch people in the community. But it's interesting, and I don't know about your local people, but for me it was very painful. I used to joke that I would have been better off pretending I came from out of town, called up, and act like I was going to invest in downtown, and they would have rolled out the red carpet for me because I'm from out of town. They would have been so excited. Oh, look, an out-of-town guy's interested in us. You know what I mean? And it's not, you probably wouldn't do this here, but I was even called a carpetbagger because I wasn't born in Escambia County. Then they're so terrified somebody could make money. Like it's a sin. They're going to make money. Oh. Well, you hope they make money because if they make money, other people will come after them. And you know what else? You should want your local people to make money because guess where they spend it? Locally. I tell people that all the time. I said, you should hope that I make a ton of money because that's why you have a new children's hospital in this town. That's why you have a new YMCA in this town because local people are the ones that run philanthropy. Local people are the ones that will give in. So I don't know who's in this room, but let's give the people that thought enough of the future of Palatka to go out and buy some buildings to go rehab them so they can make a better community. Let's give a nice round of applause. So as we get into this now, we're getting ready for childbirth. Okay, John Cotto, who wrote the book Sense of Urgency, talks about the reason most things fail is because we don't have a sense of urgency. Some do, but some don't. So we're going to talk a little bit about urgency today. So what is urgency? Number one, he says you have to have a burning platform. Now, I don't know what your burning platform is, but that's where messaging comes in. But I could hear in Joe, one of your burning platforms is we've got to make this a more vibrant place for more children stay here and more people come back. That's certainly a burning platform. The challenge is you got to build the critical mass. That's what Palatka Young Professionals is trying to do at Civicon. Build the critical mass. That's what we're doing here. Building a critical mass. We're not going to all agree. You know, I think, I got so excited when I read about the disagreement over City Hall. Does anybody know there's a disagreement, or am I the only one that knows that right now? Is that something, should I not tell you that's going on right now? It's a great test for this community. Can you have an adult conversation, a mature conversation, and eventually come to a decision that even those that aren't happy at least want wherever happens it to be successful? Because this is the test of any community. How do you handle disagreements? Do you do it in a ethical way, with integrity, or you do it with a way that I'm going to talk about here in a few seconds? So this is a great opportunity to sort of test the grit of the maturity of the organization. You have to identify and recognize success, which we've been doing here along the way. And you can't declare victory, because this thing can slide so quick. But you've got to control your property. As Joe Riley said the last 2 days, you put the wrong thing in the wrong place, you can never recover. So you've got to make sure that you make the right decisions with the right things in the right places. He showed a picture of a beautiful old 2-story house, and they wanted to tear it down. And he said, it's the corner. And he protected that corner because that corner made such a difference. So that's one of the, I think, one of the programs that the Palatka Young Professionals is going to show you. Switch by Heath Brothers say 80% of our cultural transformations fail. And they fail because of lack of clarity. So the more you can build your community dashboard, the better you'll be, because that's absolute clarity. So our dashboard's got 17 metrics, and we measure it every year. We went up in 9 this year. We went down in 2, and we stayed the same in the rest. But the ones we stayed the same or got worse are disappointing. One was obesity. Obviously, if you want to eat well, come to Escambia County. The other one was preterm birth, which means we're not getting prenatal care to the moms, which is not good. Now, some of them we moved up in and got better is great. Crime's gone down again. The other one, which was really nice, is medium income. The amount of families living in what they call middle-income households has gone up to 58%. In the state of Florida is only 50%. So for the first time, we went over the state of Florida average on middle income. I like that, because the more families that live in middle income, the healthier that's going to be for the community. So it gives you a way to measure those types of things. Peter Senji talks about, in order to succeed in change, a leader has to be able to create the right amount of creative tension. And I don't mean you want to create friction, but you want to create tension, which means where we are now and where do we need to be. Now, if the bar's too high, then I give up. If I went to the doctor, Anita Westifer, she said, whoa, you need to lose 30 pounds in the next 6 months. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm getting a new doctor. I'm getting a new doctor. Now, if she says to me, Quint, you need to lose 2 pounds in the next 6 months, I'll go 5 months, 28 days. And then I'll fast for the 2 days before I go see her again. So managing the tension, and I don't know how to manage your tension, but you've got to be a little bit comfortable with setting, and that's that self-awareness, and I congratulate you. That's why we did the quality of life survey in Pensacola, because so many people said, oh, we have a great quality of life. Yeah, if you're here, if you're there, but not for every citizen. That's why we went to Mason-Dixon to measure it. And we found out only 23% of the citizens believed we were moving in the right direction. Now, the elected officials that said it's an invalid, unreliable survey, they didn't have to worry about it because they didn't get reelected. Because the community felt that. And you're very fortunate to have elected officials here. In fact, sometimes it's amazing. Elected officials don't come to these. And I know you can't with your mayor because he had another engagement. He apologized. But let's give the elected officials that are here a nice round of applause. So the 4 circles, you got to get education right, and I'm excited about what you're doing. You know, now you're doing some brain work with your new moms when they have a baby, so they get information on how to build their baby's brain, because 85% of the brain is developed in the first 3 years. And when you can get those moms before they leave the hospital, they walk out better prepared to talk to their child and build the brain neurons. And by the way, children are hearing less words, not more words. If you could even take phones away from new moms for the first 3 years, you could have the smartest kids in America right now, because kids are actually hearing less words, not more words, so you have to build it in and so on. The next is economic development, and I'm not talking about commerce parks. You know, the day of shovel-ready land is gone. Everybody has shovel-ready land. Everybody has it. If you ever get in an airplane and look over and say, "Ooh, not much land here in the United States," every city has shovel-ready land. Every city has a commerce park with empty spaces. So what you really need now is talent. That's where this thing's going down to. Who's got the talent? If you can give me the talent, then I can start building a company here, because I need to get talent. That's where this is right now. Civic engagement is what you're doing right now, raising that civic IQ. So if somebody comes out and saying they're slowing down the speed limit, you don't say, "Oh my gosh, no." If I get hit from a car going 20 miles per hour, there's a 100% chance I will survive. At 30 miles per hour, there's a 4 out of 10 will die. At 30 is 4 out of 10. 40 miles per hour is 8 out of 10. It's crazy. I don't know about Palatka, but I spent a lot of time in Wisconsin and Minnesota. They're very pedestrian oriented. They have signs up in every crosswalk. It says it's a state law. If someone's near that crosswalk, you stop. I can literally, if I'm in Wisconsin or Minnesota, look at a crosswalk and just start walking. In Pensacola, when a car sees you, they speed up. I'm going to beat you to the crosswalk. The lanes are too wide. The streets are too wide. And we do that. We built communities for cars instead of building communities for people. And that's what we're trying to do now. And that's, again, create a great downtown. People want a sense of place. They want a sense of belonging. Why did so many people come to how many people did you figure out you had at the Blue Crab Festival? Yeah, that's sort of incredible. Did they come there because they love blue crab? I know a lot of them like beer, because you ran out of that too. But the reality is, it was more than that. People want a network. That's why some of you are here. They want a sense of belonging. They want to feel connected. That's why we have to program and keep downtowns going, because people want that sense of place. Even young people that never had it. I grew up when they had a Sears downtown in places. I grew up, they had a movie theater downtown. I grew up when you went downtown. And then the mall came and our downtown shut down. Now in LaGrange, Illinois, where I grew up, it's back again. The downtown's humming. Now, it got real lucky because it was on a train route. And that sort of helps going in and out of Chicago and so on. So now is your time. Truly, now is your time. Because you are in a good location. You're close enough to Jacksonville that you can sneak some people out of Jacksonville. You're close enough to sort of Orlando that you can sneak some young entrepreneurs that are looking for affordable opportunity and vibrancy. You got people that truly want to come back home. They just want to make sure there's an opportunity and that they're vibrant, because they do want to come back home. People want to be back home, particularly when they have children. You ever notice that? One of our reporters for the Pensacola News Journal, Doug Haller, his wife was pregnant for the first baby, and he had 2 job offers, Phoenix and Indianapolis, and he didn't know which one to take. I said, "Where's your wife from?" He said, "Arizona." I said, "Go directly there, because you're going to get there anyway, so it's a matter of how long you want to be before you go there." So, for the first time in 5 decades, people are looking in large communities of going back to small communities. And they're looking for affordability, opportunity, and vibrancy. Now, understanding the phases a community goes through to becoming great will help you achieve your desired outcomes. So this is where we go into the marathon training. Has anybody ever run? I've never run one. I did do a 2-mile one time. Has anybody ever done a 26-mile marathon? Yeah. Did you train for it? Did you make it? Did you make it? But they also told you about the psychological aspects of running a marathon. You know what's ironic when you watch a marathon? Not that many people are at the end of the marathon, because they don't stand at the end. they go somewhere between that 18 and 20 mile mark, because that's where the person's going to need encouragement. Because they're going to hit this thing called a wall. And it's not a real wall, it's a psychological wall, where everything in their body's telling them to quit, to slow down, and stop. So I'm going to walk you through what happens when initiatives succeed and what happens when they don't succeed. Because remember, in Pensacola, this was tried over and over again. Waterfront, downtown, neighborhoods, it was tried and tried and tried. Well, in fact, when I go to communities, they say, no, we already tried that once before. I said, right, but it's a different time now. Different people, different sense of urgency. So let me walk through what happens with a normal community project that doesn't make it. And that's, you need to know that, because I'm going to walk you through what are the intervention steps you have to put in so you do make it. There's always a sense of excitement, a real sense of excitement at first, because, you know, if it makes sense, everybody's sort of thrilled, at least some people. There's some champions. Some of you are champions. You would not be here if you weren't champions. Some of you have probably been here for the 5th, 6th time that something was going to happen. But normally there's champions. Things are going to get better, and there's always some pushback. But early on, the pushback sits a little quiet because there's too much excitement right now. That's phase one. That's phase one. People are feeling pretty good about it, at least the people that are vocal. And then what happens is you get into phase two. Phase two is there's still excitement, but it's starting to decrease because things take so long to get something happening sometimes. There's still champions, but they're getting a little bit tired because you don't have the critical mass, and pushback heightens. All of a sudden, pushback heightens. In 2004, when we were going to take toxic soil out of downtown and put a park down there, it started off with big hurrah. People wore buttons, right time, right project, blah, 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 blah. Everybody was so excited until they got 10,000 signatures to stop it. And then we had a referendum, and we went through this. So we learned a lot of lessons, because at first we thought everybody was for it, but the longer you wait, the harder it gets. And not here, of course, but do you know in some communities, misinformation starts going out? Yeah, like, oh my God, we're giving that guy 50 acres for $1. You know, the stuff starts just flying out there. And the pushback heightens. So what happens in phase three? Excitement lessens, the champions are getting exhausted, misinformation builds, the project changes, and either it's stopped or it's much less than you thought. And sometimes, and I understand consensus, I'm not anti-consensus. I just think you got to be careful, don't consent yourself into something that isn't going to work. I'll be in Wisconsin next week, and I always use Janesville and Beloit as an example. You're sort of lucky in Putnam County because you got Palatka. You don't have two cities about the same size, do you? No. In Rock County, Wisconsin, they got Janesville, which is around 50,000, and Beloit, which is about 38,000. And they're about 12 miles apart. Put yourself on the county commission. Whenever something's going to be built, where does Beloit think it should go? Beloit. Where does Janesville think it should go? So where does it go? In the middle, where nobody goes to it. Truly, the vocational school, the this, the that. And then they wonder why it doesn't build, because they're in consensus. I'm for consensus, but sometimes you just got to put something in the right spot. And what's the right spot? It's the spot that most citizens can enjoy it. Because this is for all citizens, not just some citizens. It's the spot that's going to attract other investment, because that's going to make the county more sustainable. Because you got to pay for things. You got to pay for pipes, poles, water, electricity, and so on. Phase four is the project changes, where even the people that were excited about it aren't as excited anymore. It's either stopped, and then the people against it gain such confidence. Because they stopped this last one, they'll stop this next one too. They actually have their email list ready to go. They got everybody ready, and they actually get their endorphins by stopping things. They're a professional stoppers. And they come up with why to stop. Now, something should be stopped. So I'm not against stopping things. We in Pensacola, at one time, One of the elected officials wanted to put an industrial fish hatchery downtown on the water. And we looked it up and said, no, that's not what should be there. And now there's a public beach for the public. So I'm not saying stopping's bad, but you shouldn't stop just to stop. You should based on the project and the merits of the project. So let me walk you through what this can look like so you don't have one of those situations. Phase 1, excitement. Phase 2, champions. Phase 1, I mean, number 3, things are, looks like the first one. It's like fool's gold a little bit. There's some pushback, but it's covert, but here's what you do. You create your burning platform. You make sure that everybody knows why you're doing this. And I can't do that, you have to do that. Your team, your leaders, your people in this room have to figure out when somebody says, why are we doing this? You can tell them why. You can explain, hey, we understand, a vibrant downtown is important to keeping kids home, and we want to keep our kids home. We need to create more opportunity for our children. We need to focus in on early brain development so our kids end up being ready for kindergarten, because if a child's ready for kindergarten, they'll probably graduate from high school. And if they're not ready from kindergarten, they probably won't graduate from high school. And a male that doesn't graduate from high school, 60% will end up in jail at some time in their life. And a female that doesn't graduate from high school will end up, 70% will have a baby between they're 18. So when people say, why are you doing this? Early brain development, thank you, Ms. Mills, for driving this. That's what it works. That's what it works. And we even have somebody who's helping pay for this. One of those want-to-get-rich guys with these books. Danny Martinez, thank you very much. Let's give him a nice round of applause. So you got to capture the heart and the mind and build that critical mass. That's why the Palatka Young Professionals are important. That's why this is so important. That's why continuing to build and the enthusiasm. That's why those 130 plus ideas in downtown were so vital. Now you got to implement as many as you can so people say, you know what, somebody listen to me. My input is valuable. Phase 2, there's still excitement, there's still champions, but pushback heightens. Because some people don't like change. Some people like it the way it is. And those some people are all sorts of interesting people. They can even be people that in the past always sort of got their way. But if all of a sudden more people are at the table, I might not have as much influence as I used to have. Sometimes it's the generation that's my age that has to back up a little bit and turn it over to a younger group of people. That's why for us, we allow the young professionals to run the quality of life survey, because they're the ones that are going to end up with this place anyway, so they got more skin in the game than anyone. But it's hard, because remember in the old days, it didn't take a lot of people to move a city. Whoever had the biggest company, whoever owned the bank, and whoever was the publisher of the newspaper could move a community. Those don't exist in most communities anymore. I spent a lot of years in Janesville, Wisconsin. Let me tell you who drove the city. Skip Bliss, who owned the newspaper. Raleigh McClellan, who had the biggest bank in town. And George Parker, who had this company called Parker Penn. Okay? Parker Penn went out of business. The bank got sold to like 5 times. The only people making any money are the sign people, I decided. It's a new bank, new bank, new bank. And the local paper's not local anymore. So you just can't get 3 people anymore. It takes 300, 3,000, 30,000 people to step up. And the beauty about what we're talking about, we don't have to argue over national politics. We don't have to argue over which party you're in. And the beauty of why this is local, and Thomas Friedman, who wrote The World is Flat, talks about it, Michael Bloomberg talks about it, is people don't, I don't know about you, but when a problem exists, is your first thought, we got a problem here in Palatka, let's call Washington, D.C.? I doubt it. Now, sometimes, and even Tallahassee's limited. Tallahassee is limited what they can do, even if they want to do things. There's restrictions on money. Even some of your local elected officials can only do so much. That's why it comes down to local, because we can all agree on this. We can all agree our kids deserve the best place in the world to live. We can all agree that we want a safe environment for ourselves, both from a police standpoint, a fire standpoint, but an environment. We can all agree that we want our people to make good wages, because that money turns over 7 times in our community. Those are the types of things we can all agree on. which is why this is so wonderful, because it can bring local people together with the same goal and the same vision, truly, as Joe talked about. But you always hit this moment, every community, and you're going to hit it more than once, the rubber hits the road. You sort of got a little bit of a Chuck Yeager moment right now going on with where do you put City Hall. And when you hit City Hall or something like that, or you have a tough movement, that's when you have to put the throttle down. But here's what happens. Anybody ever hear of Chuck Yeager? Probably the same people that heard of Vanilla Fudge, hey? Hey, if you go see the movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, did anybody ever see that movie yet? Guess what the last song they played was? Vanilla Fudge, You Keep Me Hanging On, just for those who do that. So anyway, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. If you want to go to, on the internet and go to Chuck Yeager Right Stuff, the movie Right Stuff, there's about a 3-minute, 15-second sequence where they show early in the movie Chuck Yeager. Chuck Yeager would have been an astronaut if he hadn't gotten so old. And basically, every pilot wanted to break the sound barrier. The challenge is they didn't know when the sound barrier, how fast you went to break the sound barrier. And the challenge was when you got close to breaking the sound barrier, the turbulence got so heavy, the plane would shake. Now, if you and I are driving down the road in our car and the car starts shaking, our first reaction isn't, let's push the accelerator down. It is, let's stop. So every pilot was stopping. Now, Chuck Yeager, who was a little lopsided, in fact, I have a slide that I show for people. It says, you got to be a little bit lopsided to do what we're doing here, because it is hard. You could all just go back to your house. You got houses, you got apartments. You don't have to be here. You could turn on TV. You could watch a movie. You could pull up your computer. You could get some food. You don't have to do this stuff because it's hard. It's uncomfortable. But for some crazy reason, you got to be a little bit lopsided. But you're lopsided in the right way. In 1956, a gentleman with polio wrote a book called Search for Serenity. And he talked about the fact that he was okay having polio, that he's a little bit lopsided, he called himself. But we live in a lopsided world. And he said sometimes that's okay. And what I mean by that, not negatively, you got to want something better than you want something even for yourself to do this. You got to be thinking of others. Every child is our child. Every neighborhood is our neighborhood. That's why even if something goes into a neighborhood that you don't live in, if it's not right in your neighborhood, you shouldn't allow it to happen in another neighborhood. Well, Chuck Yeager did something no other pilot did. He kept the throttle down. When he kept the throttle down, there was a big boom. They call it a sonic boom. And if you watch the movie, his wife thought he'd blown up, that he was dead. In fact, some of the other pilots who thought Chuck Yeager was a little bit crazy looked at each other, see? And then all of a sudden they saw this back of this plane, the smoke, and they realized Chuck Yeager was still alive. When you looked at his plane, it was smooth. There wasn't a turbulence. So what I'm trying to say is you will have your Chuck Yeager moments, probably more than one of them, when the community will shake, there'll be some disagreements, and the natural tendency is to pull the throttle back. And what I'm saying is you got to push the throttle down and keep going through those tough times. Why? Because you want to get to this one. You want to get to phase 3 where the excitement is there, new champions. You ever notice when things working, it gets a little more crowded? Seriously, if you ever been around, Bill, where you voted for something, it was a close vote, and a lot of people, not a lot, but at least 49% were against it, and then all of a sudden it worked. And when it worked, 2 years later, he said, Bill, I was with you right from the start. Yep, we were behind you now. Behind you meant we could have went either way with you, big guy, but we were behind you. And that's okay. You want people to feel good because you're trying to build a community self-confidence up. What's been the most fun for me the last 12 months or 14 months watching Palatka is watching your self-confidence. Watching the belief that we deserve something good. There are some communities that almost don't believe, why should we have it? We used to go through things, we don't need it because we can drive to Mobile. Why do you want to drive to Mobile? See, I want Jacksonville to someday advertise. One of the great things about Jacksonville is it's close to Palatka. Yeah. What's that island out here? The island people drive to? Is there an island like on this bridge? Where do I go? Huh? when I go over this bridge, which I've never gone over the river, huh? And if I keep going, where do I go? Huh? St. Augustine. Wouldn't it be nice if people said, thank God that bridge is there. Now I can get from St. Augustine to Palatka a little bit quicker. That's what you want to do. Because you won't believe how many cities brag that they're close to someplace else. They really do. Janesville, Wisconsin used to say, move to Janesville because you can go to Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago easy. And why don't you just go there to start? Columbia, Mississippi says, come to Columbia, Mississippi. We're close to Hattiesburg, Gulf Shores, and New Orleans. Then why don't I just go to there in the first place? Don't be afraid to dream big, because you're here because you're smart. You just got to get the other people just as smart as you so they know how good it is. The projects get better. Accurate information will win out. But you got to be willing to look at accurate information. You got to be willing to be transparent. When we put up an apartment building, everybody thought, oh, you're getting rich. We showed them the pro forma. We showed everybody the performance. Said, you want to invest? Here it is. If you want to make 4%, join me. Join me. And all of a sudden, well, I think it's better you go. I think it's better you go. Projects even get better because more and more people now are gaining confidence because the early movers are the risk takers. The early movers are the ones that are taking the big chance. And you know what? Consent is accepted. And even when you don't get your way, we still do everything we can to make the way work because we're all going to, even though we might not like where it's going, and I'm not saying crazy stuff, but we're going to try to make it work. We're going to try to make this fit. So maybe some people that wanted a fish hatchery, here's an interesting story. Our mayor wanted the fish hatchery, and when the Fish and Wildlife decided not to pursue it because of the lawsuit, within a week he went in there, took down the chain fence, and opened it up, put a parking lot in, and turned it into a public beach. So once he didn't get what he wanted, he didn't pout, didn't punish. He just said, okay, if you guys want a public beach, let's do one. And now the new mayor is putting $17 million into an educational center and making it a pure beach. But that's what I mean by consent versus consensus. Phase 4, successes build. People see that things are getting better. More investment comes. We are just now to the point where private investors are coming into our community. Stone Capital, a big investor's coming into our community. Why? Not because of philanthropy, not because of hybrid ROI, it's because now it's ROI. And you need outside investors because your local investors can only take you so far unless you've got a couple billionaires sitting here. And even they will only go so far. Beloit, Wisconsin has Diane Hendricks, second wealthiest woman in the world, widow, in case any of you guys are interested. Anyway, but basically, she owns ABC Supply Company. And her husband, Ken Hendricks, passed away about 4 years ago. She has rebuilt Beloit, Wisconsin, because she lives in it. But she will only go so far. And if she doesn't see other local money coming, she will pull back. So you can't count on just a few people. And the majority of people saying they were with it all along. So I wanted you to see the stages, because you're going to go through the stages. You're going to go through the up and downs. You're going to go through sometimes it's a little slower, sometimes it's a little faster. But when I look at your Palatka young professionals, what they're doing, when I look at the fact that you've now got a historic St. James hotel that hopefully will be like where people can stay there someday. You've got St. James College. You've got your high school graduation rate going up. You've got early brain bags going into your hospital. You've got a group of business people that have bought one of the buildings downtown. And what I heard about the plans, it's pretty cool. I hear it might have a nice restaurant in it. I hear it's going to have office building in it. And if you put the rooftop deck on there, that's where everybody will want to be. That's where everybody will want to be. So you've got a lot of great things going on, but it's not because of ROI. It's because of values. You know, today a lot of communities call me, but the first one that called me was Palatka, and that's because of Robert Mills. And I got to tell you, wherever I travel the country, I talk about Palatka. Whenever we're on a radio show, I talk about Palatka. In my book, the back of my book has an endorsement from somebody about Palatka. So thank you for allowing me to be a small piece of your community. Thank you for being here. And when you hit those Chuck Yeager moments, let's keep the throttle down. Thank you very much. Thank you. Did you want to do a few questions or not? It's up to, because of my hearing impairment. That'd be wonderful. Anybody, what was the movie your mother was in again? Gator. Ever watch the movie Gator? Is that Gator? With Burt Reynolds? Her mom was in that movie. I don't know what that means. It's like vanilla fudge and.
Thank you. What I also see in this, I'm Ron Camarda, the pastor of St. Monica's. It's right there downtown. I see that our church communities do the same thing. Just what you were saying, that it's like almost like communities within communities.
Yes.
And even in Palatka, we have so many different areas, East Pulaska, Bostwick, downtown, whatever. But this same thing happens with churches and coming together. And I'd also like to hear maybe a little bit about how veterans can be involved in it, because we have a huge veteran population, myself being a chaplain from the Fallujah, and just seeing how they can be incorporated, because our bridge is Memorial Bridge, and just taking in some of the really special things that could make a difference in a community.
When you say involved, do you mean from which way? And I mean, there's different ways. For example, probably the biggest thing that we've done with the veterans is Entrepreneur Center for Veterans. Many veterans want to start businesses. Many veterans have the ability and the potential to start business. We actually have a guy named Robert Foster who runs an Entrepreneur Center just for veterans. That's one way. Number two, of course, is if you want to do that, we, like you, probably have a veteran park where you have various military officers or military veterans come and do talks and lectures and things like that.
What I would kind of looking for, too, it would be more of, we have a lot of homeless veterans. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of issues, like even with the drug addictions and stuff like that. So that incorporating in a community, being revitalized, having possibilities for them, even possibilities for really being part of the enterprise, being part of the process of coming through, because there is a sense of poverty here in Putnam County, but at the same time, there's this huge richness of the extravagance and how beautiful the place is, ecotourism, things to really think outside of the box, to really create areas that would be like, yeah, that's where I want to go. Same thing with our church here. If I was to revitalize the church, if we were to revitalize it, that people would come from places to visit, like they would go to Europe and different places. Because our church being, I think Tabor Baptist was 150 years old just on Sunday. We're 160 years old. And just seeing that sense of real historicity.
I think now, you know, my popularity always wanes in question. History won't get you where you want to go alone. Every city I go to says we're historic. Every city I go to has old buildings, old churches. It's how do you maximize those? How do you make it work? A couple things. I went off on that one, why not? Well, there you go. A couple things to might think about, and I'm not, again, this isn't about me, but you have this river. There's this company called Scape out of New York that looks at water and comes up with how to maximize it to really, truly take it to the next level. Go on to Panama City's website, and they have a guy named Victor Dover in there right now who's putting together a plan for Panama City. You're probably to that next point where you have to now bring in some outside expertise on how to maximize some of your resources, because you've got some unbelievable resources, like you said, whether it's the Riverwalk, whether it's that, but you got to make them shine. You got bike trails. Bentonville is building their whole tourism based on bike trails. So it's how do you maximize that? And how do you, and it's not my, there's outside people that can do that. How do you maximize it? As far as things like addiction, actually we've had two Civicon speakers. One is Dr. Marvin Sapella, who's the medical director of Betty Ford and Hazleton we brought to town, and we filled the house up on the opiate crisis. The other one is Thomas McMullen, who talks about abuse and addiction, and you're very lucky. He just moved to Sarasota from the University of Pennsylvania, where he retired, and he's probably the best researcher on this in the country. I'll give his name to the Palatka Young Professionals. He'd be marvelous to bring into this community, because there's outside resources that I see communities bring in, And the homeless thing is something we're all faced with. But it's really, you have to separate homelessness from panhandling. And that's the thing you've got to separate. And then you really got to give your police department the social workers they need and the case managers they need, because that's really what is needed sometimes.
What I was saying about the churches is that we're the same way, negativity and not wanting to change, and it's just there's that percentage, and I think I'm grateful that you brought that up, because every community, and I think it's probably even our own families nowadays, that everything is that pushback, but you have to be able to be prepared for the sabotage.
Change is hard. I was talking to the president of Walmart. You know, they're going through a little bit of change with the online, and he had an outside consultant come in, and the first thing he told them on change is all the executives had to take their watch off the wrist they wore it on and put it on the other wrist, and they hated it. Let me tell you about Anaheim, Californian churches. Anaheim, Californian churches, each church takes one night a week, and that's where the homeless go. So each church takes responsibility for one night a week for the homeless. It's in Anaheim, California, and it works well. And then on top of it, the college students get credit. The local college students get credit for coming in and working in the homeless shelter every night. So there the churches have band together to create the homeless shelters. And if I'm a church and I only have it one night a week, I can make it work. So that's one of the creative ideas I've seen in the country. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Hi.
I don't know if okay.
I just look because I
Sure.
can't hear, so I have to look at lips.
My name's Douglas Hayes, and I'm a candidate for County Commissioner in District 3. And the one thing I was hoping you would clarify or make mention that on a regular basis, my perception is that you have to have something to offer.
Yes.
You need to know who your target audience is. You need to have a brand. You need to advertise. And then finally, know who your competition is. In my observation, one of the things that we're running against is we can't seem to come to an agreement on what we want to offer and who our target audience is. Those are free once we come to agreement.
I think I go that to every community because you have so much. What do you settle in on? Andrew Davis, if I'll give you a video, and we'll send this to that's where we've gained with the young professionals and their civic engagement. Andrew Davis is the national expert on figuring out what your brand is and what your message is. And you got to put your stake in the ground. You know, are you going to be the best river city in the world? You're going to be the best bike trail in the world? You're going to be the best something. Being historic won't get you there. And there's a city in Missouri that's the quilting capital of the world, so you can't be the quilting capital of the world. That's where you're going, but it's an interesting story. So what happened is, and I know it's getting late, this lady made quilts in this little town in Missouri, and her grandson or son started putting her on YouTube. And she'd talk about how you quilt, how you stitch, how you do this, and it got to be where 250,000 people were following her on YouTube. So then people wanted to come to her to meet her. Well, now they've got 200 employees working in her stores. She's got a hotel with a sewing machine in every room, and she's become the quilting capital. Depew, Indiana is the hip and ankle and joint replacement capital of the world. That's where about 80% of them are made. Now, if you go to Missouri, and I can find the name of the town, the good news is she even created a place for guys to hang out. You know, it's got Lazy Boys TV and so on. So I think that's what Dottie's special is. What is your brand? And then how do you hit it? But the other thing about tourism, create a great place for the people that already live here, and you'll get the tourist. Because it's all about creating the quality of life for people that are already here. And if the people that are already here feel it's good, then you'll get the tourism. Thank you. I think you got to get a brand, you got to get a message, but it's hard.
Hi, I had a question about how you deal with the chicken and the egg idea in that, and I think that's a lot of what we suffer from here, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, and that we have a lot of ideas and vision, and we pound on our poor county commissioners about the things we want to do, and they're held to what the budget says we can do, you know, and we keep trying to say, well, if we make this little bit of investment, we'll get this much return, But, you know, in the hard dollars, in the end of the day, it's still a chicken and egg tuggle.
Well, no, I think absolutely, and that's always the challenge. People want residents downtown. Residents ain't gonna come downtown if there ain't downtown. And then they want office. Well, nobody's gonna have an office if there's nothing to do. Well, let's have somebody open up all these shops. Why, to go broke? You know, you gotta get enough people. You gotta start with the program. But the other thing is, again, I don't work for these people, but I've met them all. They're such outside experts. One of the things that we did that I thought paid off, we hired a person named Peter Brazili, and he did market research. And he did market research on, you know, how much demand there was for like apartments, housing, those things. And then we released it to everybody. Because usually just a developer does that and they hold it. We released it to everybody so everybody could see it. I've hired him to do a market research on retail. So what retail do we need? What will make it? Because the last thing you want to do is have somebody not make it. So I think using market research is really smart. Now, when it comes to public money and placeholder money, there's a fellow named James Lima. And James Lima is an expert in looking at public money and giving you the ROI or public money. So he can literally say, if you put this public dollars here, like he did that, you know, the 17 million we're spending on this beach, we hired James Lehman to put an ROI on it. And that meant how much new residential would we attract if we open up that beach, what taxes they would pay, and what is the ROI. Because with public money, you want to get anywhere from 5 to 10 times the return when you're spending public money by attracting private investment. But see, most elected officials are cautious to bring in those outside experts because they'll get beat up for it. No, they really will. Maybe not here, but you know, they really will. Well, you know, why are you bringing James Lima in for so much money to tell you something you should know? You don't know it. And that's why big cities outcompete us, because big cities have the money to bring in this type of expertise. Big money have the money to bring in that market researcher. They have that money to bring in that James Lima. They have that money to bring in that Victor. And that's where it's hard. And that's where you have to combine it. So we find sometimes it's the private money that supports some of that. So everything I've mentioned, like that market research, that was a private dollar. In Hot Springs, Arkansas, the casino is paying for the quality of life survey. In Odessa, Texas, Bubba Salisbury is paying for some of that because he lives in that community and he's been very lucky and he's trying to do it. But again, it's chicken or egg. The first thing you have to do is have confidence and speak kindly about your own community. Because, you know, sometimes people wonder no one comes because they talk about so negative about their own community. Years ago, again, I'm in healthcare. A nurse came up to me at one of the conferences, you know, I need to talk to you. No one wants to work on my unit. She says, you work harder than anywhere else on my unit. We're short-staffed, and I can't get anyone to come work on our unit. What should I do? I said, you got to shut up. So you also, as this gentleman said, how are you going to message your community? How are you going to message your community? Because you live here. So what are you going to notice that's bright about it? Do you tell people your high school graduation rate's going up? Do you tell people the excitement about what's happening downtown? Do you talk about the river? Do you talk about St. James College? I find sometimes we're in it, but we don't realize it, that we're in it. And then you have to be patient as it builds, and it builds one block at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one business at a time. This is a slow process. But I agree with this gentleman. You do have to put your stake in the ground and say, who are we and what are we? And sometimes that takes a little bit of outside expertise to tell you.
Small plug, we are one of 6 trail towns in the state of Florida.
Right.
And we need to really brag and
Bentonville's building a
build
whole
that.
dang
Build on
message,
that.
and we got bike trails. Let me tell you what Bentonville did. And again, they blew up their chamber, for example. They recreated their chamber, and they almost hired analysts in their chamber. It's really an interesting thing. And this is just them, because their chamber spent a lot of time trying to attract outside companies in, but they still do, but they changed it. And this ain't a chamber question, this is just what they did. So they looked at analytics, and they went in and they found out how many companies are owned by founders that love that love biking. And they found out that most of them are in Colorado, because people that own companies, like small companies, you know, big and small. And I don't mean like motorcycling, bicycling, and so on. So they basically then hired a company to find out who they were, and they came up with 100 of them. And then they sent them an invite to come to Bentonville, Arkansas, to try out their bike trails. And they sent them, everyone got dirt from Bentonville Bike Trail. And they asked them to please return that dirt to Bentonville. And they looked for companies that have between 2 and 18 people, because those are the ones to move. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's what you got to do. You got to get into this, like using the numbers, looking at the resources, and figuring out what can you do to attract. Because I imagine you can do some wonderful things with your bike trails. But it's hard. All this is hard. Anything else? Maybe one more question? And I'll stay over. I mean, I'm here till tomorrow, so.
This is more of an observation. If I'm not mistaken, I've got 3 county commissioners here, and how many commissioners from the city?
What was going on at the city, you said? I think I'm spending the morning with them tomorrow, aren't I? Go ahead.
And I've got a county commissioner here. I don't have a a county manager here. I don't have a city manager here. I think it's very interesting that, and this is one I think one of the biggest problems with the county and the town, because it's a town. You talk about moving City Hall. There's a lot of government employees still downtown, and nobody's saying anything about where those people are going. And as part of that conversation, and maybe people just don't realize it because it happened so long ago, the county purchased land to move the courthouse out of downtown. And if it hadn't been for the great collapse of 2008, the courthouse would have been gone. And that's what I think one of the biggest problems I'm seeing with this is. You talk about the river. I know people that almost live on the river fishing, and they couldn't even get near the river this year because it stank so bad. There's a big disconnect in this presentation about what is really going on. I mean, I looked at Pensacola, I looked at Escambia County. We are not Pensacola, we are not Escambia County. We don't have 300,000 people. We don't have the average income that they have. We have the higher poverty level that they have. Yes, we need to do something, but I'm sorry, my feeling is this is a big kumbaya, that we really need to sit down and get the town and the county together to be doing things and looking at things, because it's just great that we're all sitting around talking about it, but I don't see the touch with reality.
All right, thank you. That's why I think it'd be good to hire Mason-Dixon to do a quality of life survey, because that really gives you an objective viewpoint, because you can be right, you can be wrong. And what I find as I travel the country, we're all are different. We're different sizes. We're not Bentonville. We don't have the Waltons, but that doesn't mean we still can't be the best Putnam County we can be, the best Palatka we can be. And the other thing, too, is going to City Hall. I hope those people shop downtown. I hope they live downtown. And I hope they go to stores downtown. Because what happens sometimes is you have workers, but if they work downtown but they don't shop downtown, they don't make it great downtown. So if there's that many people working downtown, your downtown should be thriving with stores and shopping. Anything else? And by the way, I'll talk about elected officials. Elected officials can't do this. If you're looking for elected officials to lead this and do this, it won't happen. It has to be more than elected officials. It has to be a lot of people in the community, and particularly the private individuals have to look at this. And that's not Quint Studor talking, that's Gallup research, that's Jim Clifton. Where communities make a mistake is when they get myopic thinking elected officials can do more than they can really do. It takes an entire community to do what they can do. And the other thing on the kumbaya, I like a little kumbaya, but the reality is, I think when you look at your assessment, sir, it was pretty accurate. It wasn't 6s, 8s, 7s. It was 2s, 3s, 4s. It's a beginning of that. But remember, be a part of the solution, not just part of the problem. Bring ideas to the table. Last one, then we've got to wrap it up. But I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that's the type of conversation you have to have.
I would like to end on a positive note. I met my wife here in '83, worked for Kmart when it was open down the road, and we raised our family in Jacksonville, or Orange Park actually. I was the mayor there and on town council in Orange Park. Lived there for 20 some odd years. But my wife was born and raised here. We moved back and retired here. We loved it in Palatka. And I can tell you, I've been to every one of these meetings, and these meetings I've come to, and I've seen the kumbaya, and that's what we need is kumbaya. And look at what's happened in this town just in the last couple of months with the St. James, the building announced last week. I know we've got, and there's been a lot of negativity, but I live in East Palatka, we have a Taco Bell and a Popeyes, and people are complaining about that. Well, the people that are complaining, there's all types of property still on the river for sale that somebody can buy and put a restaurant there if they want to put a nice restaurant instead of fast food. Well, we're growing, we're doing things, seeing the positive in this community rather than down on everything negative that we're trying to do. So I just want to thank the town, and I know I went to League of City meeting. We used to love our Palatka League of City meetings down here, and I know they would have been here tonight if they weren't hosting that League of Cities. So thank you for what you're doing, and we love living in Palatka. We love the area.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask you to do one thing, and that's this. As I mentioned in the beginning, every one of you could have been somewhere else tonight, and you chose to be here. It also goes for Quint Studor. He could have been anywhere else in the world he wanted to be on this Thursday night, but he chose to be in Palatka, Florida, trying to help us help ourselves. So let's thank him one more time.